Fabulous Designs takes you to the four corners of the planet to discover the world's most extraordinary homes. Whether an open savanna, on a deserted island, high in the mountains, in the city center, or even in the heart of a natural reserve, these out-of-the-ordinary properties fascinate for not only their originality, design, and story, but also for being at the forefront of ecology. Evoking wonder, inspiration, and surprise, meet those responsible for their conception and walk through the doors of these homes that you've always dreamed of visiting on a private tour that'll take your breath away. Welcome to the fabulous world of design. Today, Fabulous Designs invites you to discover an extraordinary luxury eco-lodge in Thailand before flying to France to discover the modern-day yurt of a family based in the French region of Corrèze. But first, we head to Scotland and the UK to visit a designer house on one of the most beautiful islands in the country. Many people dream of leaving behind city life and moving to the countryside, somewhere remote or even secluded where nature reigns supreme. But only few actually take the plunge. Rising to this bold challenge, Nick and Kate Middleton decided to leave the British Midlands to relocate to the popular Isle of Skye in the northwest of Scotland, eager to build a modern and environmentally friendly abode.
It's an interesting process, making something from the beginning. And when we first came here, the land hadn't been used for a long time, so it's quite a responsibility to then put something in the landscape.
Enthralled by the raw green landscapes of the island, they built a cottage on their rocky plot of land in the Bay of Fiskevig. What started out as a holiday home is now being transformed into a main residence for the whole family. After buying the neighboring plot from a retired local farmer, they began building a second, larger, but equally environmentally friendly house. To finance their project, they rented out their first home on a seasonal basis. It is now ranked among the most beautiful holiday rentals in the UK. So how does one build an ancient land without destroying it? How does one build an eco-friendly home that is also modern in architecture using only simple materials? It was with these issues in mind that the owners called on the services of Alan Dixon, a local architect known for his environmentally aware building designs.
We wanted the building to work very efficiently, so we didn't need much energy to run it. So it was a very simple ecological idea that we had to build something very economically.
Why would you build something that's not going to be now when it's important that the planet is looked after a bit? I mean, I don't know what we do with the amount of building we have in this country that isn't. I mean, it is terrifying. I mean, it was never meant to be that in the first place. It was meant to be a holiday home. It was meant to be something that we came to eventually once the children were grown up. But we moved before then.
I guess we were limited by the amount of money we had. And we saw this article in the Sunday Times, and the house had been built quite cheaply using wooden construction techniques. And we'd built, in our last house, a studio in the garden of wood. And it was a lovely building and worked very well. It was very warm, wasn't damp, easy to heat. So we thought that would be an interesting way of constructing cheaply in Scotland. We didn't know if it was possible. And it was by chance that we came across Alan Dixon of Rural Designs. It was a place I was staying. I'd never heard of them. And Alan was very keen. He could see, I think, that we, Kate and I, were interested in doing something very contemporary. And I think he saw it as an opportunity for the practice to do something unusual.
I think he thought, we've got guinea pigs here.
Yeah.
I can try some exciting designs with these people. And we hadn't really understood that until the end of the process. But quite often he would say, well, it's an experiment.
It's very important from design to express the time that we live in, and when we came up here, most of the buildings were trying to look like their old buildings. And we have new materials, we have new cars, we have roads to move materials about. So we certainly wanted in our buildings to express, the 21st century. Not only were we wanting to make buildings that were modern, but we wanted to make buildings that were durable. The landscape is beautiful, but it's also very rough. It's very real. There's parts of the place that are quite ugly and brutal in a way. And we like to think of our building as being part of that. I think in an exposed climate, heating costs can be very, very high. So it's important to try and make the houses as comfortable as possible, but by using as little energy as possible. It's good for the sustainability of the planet, but it's also good for the sustainability of the house and the owners of the house.
For the owners, building a home in such a remote location was a big responsibility that required them to adapt to their environment and to all the external elements. The architect's approach was quite radical, both in terms of the structure of the house and the materials and colors used.
So this is the hen house. The building's a very simple shape. We get very strong winds from the north, so the building kind of points towards the wind to reduce the surface area pointing at the sea. But that surface area is also all glass, so it gets the view. This is the place where we came and arrived at the site for the first time. We realised that this is where the house has to be. It'll look through this little valley towards the sea, towards the lighthouse, the white lighthouse right at the end there. And this became the focus for the house. So we almost started with the idea of framing this location, enjoying this location, and lifting the house off the ground allows us to, in a way, almost as an out-of-body experience, to sit and gaze at the landscape. The yellow is the same colour as some of the plants that grow, the flowers. You'll see them around the landscape, a very beautiful yellow and orange colour. And it also goes back to an enjoyment I have, for example, of working Le Corbusier and the way in the Unité d'Habitation he frames the colour of the balconies, and there's a wee bit of a homage to his work as well.
The hen house, which owes its name to its resemblance to a chicken coop, was converted into a charming cottage that Nick and Kate ran out to nature-loving holidaymakers all year round. This is precisely what appealed to Les and Sue, two Welsh tourists who were also won over by the eco-friendliness of the dwelling.
We're up in Skye about 2 years ago, and we wanted to come back, and so we were looking for a cottage, and then in one of the national newspapers they had the kind of 10 best cottages in Skye, and this was one of them. So they're all, mainly modern ones, a few old ones. And so we looked on the website, and but it was recommended as one of the best cottages in Skye. And I'm a town planner, so I love modern houses, so it's great.
When we first pulled up, outside. I thought it looked like an enormous garden shed, but I knew from the pictures that I'd seen that it was really modern inside. And so when we came through the door and came through, I thought, oh, wow, this is lovely, really lovely. And of course the weather's terrible, but in here you feel really cosy, warm. It's ecologically sound, which is very good. It's devastating to see what's happening to the environment. So it's good that something like this is, so hopefully beneficial in terms of bringing people to the island and caring about the environment as well.
The small 70 square meter house was built on stilts to limit its impact on the environment. To save costs and optimize energy efficiency, Alan Dixon's firm relied on reinforced insulation and the use of a wood stove. The orientation and opening of the house were also carefully thought out to make the most of the available sunlight.
The small rooms have small windows and the big rooms have big windows. A lot of the heat in the house comes through this window which faces south, and during the day this allows the space to heat up so that we're not relying on electricity or other kinds of heating. So you call that solar gain. It shouldn't be that we have sustainable design and other design. I think it's responsible for every building to try and make the most of its environment and the path of the sun or the views of the building. All of these things are important, no matter the building. For this project, where we realised that although back there that we felt we were in a hollow, as soon as we stepped up to this part of the landscape, we could see the view. So we realised that this was the important part of the house, which immediately made us realise that this house had to work in 2 levels. It's interesting that this house, which is a permanent home, is connected to the ground, and this house, which is a holiday home, is lifted off the ground.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
That's only something I realised after the design, but there's maybe a subconscious realisation of the different functions of the 2 houses.
Alan applied the same simple and effective eco-building formulas inside. Local timber for the structure, reinforced cladding on all sides of the house, even the floor, and large windows to enjoy the landscape and further emphasize the constant link between interior and exterior. Inspired by the old farm sheds typical of the area, he reimagined these rural buildings as warm and welcoming living spaces.
These buildings were made in this area for a particular reason, because they last quite a long time, they're easy to maintain, so this material is great to use, really interesting to use. And the house looks beautiful, I think.
No cutting-edge technology for energy, just a low-tech architectural hack which makes use of a wood stove to heat the 150 square meters of the Black House and provide hot water all year round.
This is just one big space. Part of it is the kitchen, part is the living area, and the fireplace is the main sort of focus, and it's in the winter it's where the heat comes from. That's all we have to heat the house. And because the house is really insulated, it works really well. So right at the back of the fire in here there's a small boiler, and the water comes into the pipes here, and when we have the fire going it heats the water for the whole house. So again, that works very efficiently, particularly in the winter. And the tank that saves the water is very highly insulated, so it retains the heat really well. And this is one of the main beams in the house. This is an engineered wooden beam. So it's made up of lots of little pieces of wood are stuck together, and that's 7 meters long. So that's the main support for this part of the roof. And yeah, so it's all very simple. There's no steel in the house. It's all wooden. So the structure is all wood with no steel beams at all. All of the windows are triple glazed, so it gives a very low U value. And because we have this whole space is window, it was really important that we had triple glazing to keep the U value as low as possible so we don't lose much heat from the house. Now, I guess this house costs approximately £45 a month to run for everything. So for heating, for light, everything. So it's very, very cheap. I mean, I love being able to go and fish and go out on the sea, and I love the weather, watching the weather, and all of those things are very, very special and have changed me, I think. And having the dog makes you walk into the landscape, so you feel much more a part of the landscape and you're aware of the seasons.
In line with this minimalist approach, Nick and Kate opted for inexpensive raw materials, combining cement blocks, waxed concrete, and oriented strand board for the walls. In combination with insulation, these prevent heat loss.
In the first house we built with Alan, he tested us because he wanted to see how far he could push the design ideas that he had. And I don't think in any other houses that he'd built up to that point had any of the clients accepted to use this, which is usually a sheathing building material. One of the benefits is that you can attach anything to it. And when you pull the screws out, you can't see where the screw holes are. And it will take very heavy weights, and it's very, very cheap. It's incredibly tough and very warm. I mean, it's warm to touch, and it's also a warm colour. So it's really beautiful with the sun coming onto it. It looks really lovely. So these walls are 320 millimetres thick. In the ceiling, there's 450 millimetres of insulation. And in the floor, there's 250 millimetres of foam, very dense foam insulation. So the whole of the envelope of the building is very well insulated and very airtight.
In addition, dual flowing ventilation allows indoor air renewal and to gain a few extra degrees of temperature by recovering heat from used air, which is expelled outside.
In all of the rooms, there's an inlet and an outlet to take away the stale air and bring in the fresh air. On normal day-to-day use, you just have it on a very low setting, and it uses very little energy. It uses about the same as a 40-watt light bulb, so the energy consumption is very small for the system. And it's common in Germany, it's common in Norway, Sweden, Denmark to have those systems, but in the UK it's quite unusual to have a building that has that within it.
I like the natural materials and the way that you don't try and disguise anything, you just leave it as what it is.
I mean, you just have to look at the light in this room and the kind of, you know, the windows that are this big that become features in a room. And it's a lovely space to be in and to live in. It's honest, it's authentic, it's rough brick and white and concrete floor.
And I think it's more at home in this landscape than the neighbour's house. In this part of the world, people are very tolerant of other people's taste and desires. So they might not like it themselves, but they don't get upset about it.
It was slightly dangerous because we didn't know whether it would work or not. Yeah. And lots of people move here and find it very difficult to live. Yeah. So I think Skye either sucks you up or spits you out. And I think that happens to a lot of people. And I think for me, it's really sucked me up and I really enjoy it.
It took Kate and Nick a total of 9 months to make their dream of building a secluded dream home on the Isle of Skye a reality. Simple yet robust, the houses are also economical. The Middletons and Alan Dixon are already planning to use the same model to build a new, smaller, but equally eco-friendly cottage. Redefining tourism and giving it a new purpose to help protect the planet is an approach that is gaining ground everywhere in the world. For many years, hotel construction was a major cause of ecosystem degradation. But some are now seeking solutions to turn their implantation into a positive, both for the surrounding nature and for local populations. We visited a hotel which is a pioneer in terms of sustainable development on the breathtaking island of Eco-Cottage in Thailand. Its founders, Sonu Shivdasani and his wife Ava, have been working in sustainable luxury tourism for more than 20 years. They believe that high-end vacations can be compatible with environmental conservation. Soneva Kiri, a resort comprising of 35 villas harmoniously integrated into the landscape, is one of the finest examples of their work.
Sustainability is not a challenge. It's complementing us. It is our way. It's infectious. And the more people that get infected in the world, the longer our planet will live.
So how does one build a luxury hotel in the middle of the jungle while protecting the environment? How to be water independent and create your own water treatment plant? How can a hotel project boost the local economy? These are the challenges the hotel team had to meet to create a place where authenticity and sustainability are in the foreground.
Our whole core value, the core purpose of our company is built around what we call slow life. And slow life stands for sustainability, local, organic, wellness, and this is what is the foundation for our hosts and what we try and achieve for our guests. We don't just talk about sustainability, it is very much a way of life. It's not a big resort. We have 35 villas, varying in size, 6-bedroom down to 1-bedroom, and different styles and designs, but still remaining true to the architecture and the feel we want to create.
The villas were therefore built in the Thai tradition, entirely from wood, with simple and elegant designs. The obvious choice for Darius, who supervised the entire project.
We are trying to consider a traditional way of building because when we design a villa, it depends on the location. Like this is Thailand, so we'll definitely have to be, the design should be incorporated in a way of how the Thai people build their own houses. So that's why we have this kind of designs in a villa.
We wanted to reduce the impact on the beauty of the landscape as much as possible. So massive clearance of wood and trees was something that was not part of that plan. The villas were really sort of built within the habitat. We respected the jungle. It was an obvious choice that we would use natural materials wherever possible and wherever practical. If you use concrete and steel, of course, the carbon footprint in the generation and creation of that is enormous, and of course really goes against what we're about.
Mostly, I would say 80 or 85% of materials are locally available. We have different kind of species like eucalyptus poles, We have teak wood, but mostly are coming from Thailand. It's less carbon footprint to bring them here. We are actually considering and make sure these are sustainable materials in a way that it's coming from plantation, because we are not actually allowing our materials to be purchased or being taken from a random cutting of the forest. That's why we make sure that we have this certificate from the suppliers and we are treating them properly with the chemicals, also sustainable for the environment. It's not just a matter of putting chemicals on it, because we want to make sure that the chemicals we are using is actually sustainable as well. So it will be long lasting, because if you are not treating them, you're going to replace it every now and then, which is you have to cut more trees from the forest.
The flooring and all the furniture are also made of local wood, a real challenge for the workers involved.
The way of construction is a little bit of a challenge, because if you consider these are wood, they are not in a straight line. If you cut them, you can't have it like very straightforward. It comes with a curve, it comes with a different shape, so it's a little bit challenging. But we don't consider this as a really, really extreme challenge, because we are enjoying what we do. Because if you look at in our villa, the design is not conventional. I mean, it's not made of concrete with the straight lines. It's really, really like we consider the shape to be a design as well.
One of the most surprising and distinctive constructions of the resort is the Den, a building that serves as a play space for children. This incredible structure, made entirely of local bamboo, is shaped like a manta ray from above.
Many would say the most important room in the house is the bathroom. The shampoos, the conditioners, this is of course is all organic and everything's refillable. We avoid in all cases to not use plastic in the resort anywhere. Actually, this is stainless steel sinks, but they're all made in Thailand. We're in our outside bathroom area, which is, again, we have a rainforest shower here, and then down here we have the bath. Here we use sandstone, again, a very natural material. This is actually recycled because it's offcuts from the original sandstone blocks. And I think it complements very well the woods and the bamboos to create this, again, this very natural environment. We live our life in boxes. If we live in cities, we live in a box, which is our apartment. We get in our car, which is another box. We go and sit in our office, which is another box. And we're pretty sort of restricted and constricted. So when you come to Sanivakiri, of course, all this is taken away.
Water supply is one of the biggest challenges of living in a remote location. The hotel uses almost exclusively rainwater, which it collects in large outdoor ponds. The tropical climate also allows them to be self-sufficient during the rainy season, and partly so during the dry season, thanks to rainwater storage.
Since we are on a very remote island here, we don't have a connection to the normal water supply. So we have to make sure that we've got our own water supply, and we actually rely entirely on rainwater. So we have a few large catchment basins, and we also, when those basins are empty at the end of the dry season, we pump up groundwater. But basically, water is a limited resource here on this island. So we have to be very conscious about how much we use, and also we have to make sure that we still can provide the highest quality of domestic and drinking water to both our guests and our hosts.
Once collected, the water is filtered and then used directly for household purposes, such as showering and cooking. The drinking water undergoes more extensive treatment.
We have a number of filters here. These will filter out any kind of particles, and this is a UV filter that will kill any bacteria that might be in the water. And it doesn't leave any flavor like chlorine would. So after it's passed through this system, it will go in here. And these beads, they contain some essential minerals that our body actually needs. So for our blood we need iron, we need calcium for our bones, a number of other minerals to make our body function normally. And we add that back into the water to make it more healthy to drink. Here we have a bottle of CO2, so 1 tap for sparkling water and 1 tap for still water.
Every day, around 400 liters of drinking water are produced to meet the needs of guests and poured into these glass bottles. This system avoids the use of 150,000 plastic bottles a year. Wastewater management is another key challenge, and they had to come up with the least environmentally harmful solution. Ultimately, they opted for a closed system. The water is treated on site to prevent it from being released into the ocean.
This is our wastewater treatment system. It's all natural, and the way it basically works is we get raw sewage that flows from a septic tank into this pond. There we've added some microorganisms to it, and then we blow air into the water. And with the help of the air and the microorganisms, all the bad stuff will be broken down very quickly. And then finally it will all flow to a big collection pond where we've got water cabbage growing on the surface that absorbs all the nutrients. We can use that for fertilizer in the gardens. And we've got tilapia fish swimming in it. And those tilapia, they are sort of indicator species that the water quality is good. It's actually just with microorganisms, sunlight, air, plants and some fish, we can turn wastewater, sewage into water that's usable for irrigation.
The next vital step in the hotel's eco-friendly initiative is to improve its electricity production in order to minimize its environmental footprint.
Right now generate most of our electricity with diesel generators, but we are really trying to bring the diesel consumption down. So that's a big challenge. We are getting more and more successful in that, so that's a good thing. And we are also heavily focusing on moving more towards renewable energy sources, mostly solar.
Our hosts live this life, and it is also important to our guests because they appreciate what we stand for. Dine on your own under 1 billion stars. I mean, it's just fantastic. Or have the sand between your feet on a beach where no one else goes. You really are getting back to nature, and we have to take care of nature. And I think that really is what makes us special. And of course, it is luxury too, but it's intelligent luxury.
A pioneer in high-end ecotourism, the hotel has inspired many establishments around the world in recent years. Their success suggests that greener travel is not just a fad, but a new way of thinking about holidays with a focus on more sustainable values. Although nature is defined by rounded shapes and curves, for obvious practical reasons, humans are still designing homes full of angles and straight lines. Indeed, while square floor plans are easy to measure and allow easy extension and volume calculations, round structures are more complex to tackle. And yet, for centuries, nomads and settlers alike have built their shelters in a circular shape. From African huts to Inuit igloos and Mongolian yurts, round dwellings have existed for thousands of years and proven their strength and endurance over time. Today, more and more architects are taking inspiration from these construction models to create eco-friendly and sustainable buildings.
Throughout the 20th century, we've really had to put up with an architecture that's very rectangular, very angular, very cold, and very cement-based. And it's true that today we're witnessing the tendency in architecture to go organic, nimble, to blend in with its environment, to be covered in vegetation in the aim of camouflaging itself in nature's midst, often disappearing. It's a different approach. And it was about time.
We traveled to Corrèze on the heights of Toul to discover the yurt that Christian and Jean-Francois call home. With its bioclimatic architecture, the yurt, which is certified as a low-energy building, blends into the landscape. So how can this originally nomadic building model be made suitable for sedentary life? What are the advantages of a round house compared to a rectangular one? What makes a person decide to build a circular home? These are the questions that the couple and their architect grappled with to realize their project, a space that is often considered as atypical, but is now becoming an increasingly popular choice of home.
This house was a joint project. The brainchild conceived together with the architect Virginie Farge. So Jean-Francois and I, we got the same inspiration almost in the same moment as we stood on the barren plot.
There was a lot of wind that day, and we were asking ourselves how a house in a windy place like this could hold up in such conditions. And so the idea came naturally to build a house as we did.
Well, in the end, this shape seemed pretty logical to us, with respect to the landscape that unfolds, and we also wanted to get the most of this view as possible. The round shape evokes a sense of cocooning. There's no doubt that it is enveloping, so it has a soothing effect and is also reassuring. You can feel it as soon as you step into this space. You get, well, you immediately feel a sense of relaxation.
What's nice is that when you're in the room, the living room, sitting on the sofa, looking around, the cylindrical ceiling with its decorations and the wood, all the wood, makes you relax. So you can just sit there and, like, you can let the place lull you. When I come home from the Paris region, I'm always a little stressed. The house always fills me with a sense of rest.
In addition to the serenity they exude, round-shaped buildings are aerodynamic, reducing wind drag and therefore providing better thermal insulation. Wind flows around the house, unlike the square builds where it catches on the walls more, resulting in heat loss.
What was used here to create the volume is the building method used in yurts. It's a very simple system, very effective, based on the keystone concept, using a hollow ring that allows for the creation of a light well. You've got spokes around the ring and a wall that holds everything together. Sometimes, when thinking of a round house, difficulties seem to arise. Do we use a central post, radiating beams? It can get rather complicated. But if you opt for the yurt system, you arrive at a very simple structure, and that's what I suggested to the builders.
The architect took her inspiration from this typical Central Asian habitat, a tent made from felt, handy to live in and easy to transport, making it optimally suited to a nomadic lifestyle and the harsh continental weather. Unlike in traditional yurts, the walls are made of a classic timber frame made from Douglas fir, a native species. To complement the use of wood, various eco-friendly systems were installed in the house.
The house is built on stilts made of concrete and wooden slabs. That is to say, we built small concrete poles that raised the house 40 centimeters over the ground, and onto which we installed a wooden structure that makes up the floor.
This approach not only allows to save on foundations, but like traditional yurts, it also limits the impact on the ground. In addition, building the house on stilts provides protection against radon, a harmful radioactive natural gas found in regions with granite-based soils like Limosa, and which can diffuse into the home through the floor.
We also created a green roof that allowed us to return to the soil a little bit of what we stole. It was a way of creating an area of vegetation in a place that we had mineralized. The rampant mineralization of the earth today is a huge problem, so this is a way of dampening our impact.
The green roof provides you with an added beauty. Depending on the period of the year, the roof is, well, when it's in flower, it's absolutely magnificent. And quite simply, it's just so uplifting to live in a house that's beautiful.
It's funny because it has become a place where the birds and the bees come to live. So it's a space inhabited by the animals.
In addition to providing biodiversity, the green roof provides both thermal and acoustic insulation.
You've got the dynamics of a surface that is shaded by vegetation, plus a layer of earth that keeps things cool, a blade of air below that ventilates it. So, in fact, this system greatly improves the general comfort in summer. The result is a very cool roof.
Living in a yurt has changed the family's habits. They have become more aware of their water and energy consumption and have installed solar panels and a 3,000-liter rainwater tank. A freight container was given a second life as a storage space. Simply mounted on 4 blocks, it was very quick to erect. Despite its limited impact on the ground, it also helps to insulate the house. Being positioned almost adjacent to the north side, it protects it from cold winds.
So here we find ourselves in the main room, the living room kitchen, but this volume is also connected to the mezzanine. You have an overview of the general structure. We're at the center of the entire yurt's volume. It creates a sense of space that is accentuated by the fact that there is a light well that illuminates the center. The difficulty with this site was figuring how not to see the neighbors. We wanted to open up onto a view to the north, and we succeeded, while at the same time exploiting the southern exposure to the sun. And in the end, that's exactly what we got here in this room.
A solar energy supply that also provides heat for the owners.
Our electricity consumption has been greatly reduced. We use less heating. We have a pellet stove that provides us with additional heating when it gets very cold and the sun doesn't provide heat as it comes through the bay windows. As far as how much we consume, well, we went from... How much were we spending when we ran on fuel oil?
2,000 euros.
2,000 euro per year in fuel oil. Here we've come down to 300 euro in heating per year.
Living in a yurt, well, normally it's just one big open space. There's one room and everything is open. Here we have the advantage of having enough room to have an open space, a semi-open space, and, well, for the bedrooms, closed spaces. So in the end, we actually have several options to choose from.
Yurts are built around the keystone principle, which means that there's no need for support posts. But for the sake of aesthetics and to give the place a more organic feel, they decided to use 2 raw birch pillars in the middle of the house.
That was our dream, because it's like bringing nature into the house. There's something very sensual about it. You can touch the tree as you pass by. You come down from the landing, and you can rest your hand on a tree. You feel like you're caressing a tree in the forest.
This yurt is entirely made of timber and clad in several types of wood. In an effort to use local materials, all the wood comes from the forest in the Limousin region.
We're in Corrèze. There's a big lumber industry here. It seemed logical to us to employ the local craftsmen. So in no way were we going to import Brazilian wood to build our house. One must think universal and build local.
About 20 kilometers from Christiane and Jean-Francois's home, Virginie, the architect, and her family have taken the experiment even further. Their main residence consists of a central yurt surrounded by 3 satellite yurts. The building is completely self-sufficient in energy.
So here we're at the front of the house, which is made up of a main yurt that's mostly glass and that gives onto the terrace, which is the main living area, and that's surrounded by smaller yurt satellites that are linked to the main room. Those are the bedrooms. We used a type of insulation that's definitely more effective than what's used in a classical yurt for sure. We used sheep's wool that we picked up from a local farmer, and it insulates very well. The only thing you have to be careful about are the moths, but otherwise it's super effective and, well, he was practically throwing the stuff away, so that's a really effective recycling. The walls are insulated with blankets. The blankets are also wool. We purchased a stock of them at an army surplus. Now, this room is really well illuminated. The light pours in from the light well, which is about 2 meters in diameter. It allows us to live in natural light from morning to evening. We only have to turn on the lights later in the day, compared to a typical house where you often have to turn on the lights when it starts getting dark or when it's cloudy. When we were designing this project, we ran across a brief article on the mud brick floors in New Mexico that the Indians use in their traditional home. That little article really made us want to do the same thing. So we poured this mud brick floor and then oiled it. So now it's waterproof. And as the years go by, it acquires a patina. It hardens and gets darker. At the beginning, the earth or clay is light gray. Now, as you can see, it's black. A dark floor stores the sun's energy and gives off the stored heat in the course of the evening. This building here is a water tower. We have 2 tons of water, 2,000 liters. So that's 2,000 liters of water uphill from the house. Because it's a little bit higher up. We collect rainwater and store it down below in tanks. So then we start pumping when the sun is shining, usually from noon to 2 o'clock. A timer goes off and the water is pumped up to the water tower. So, in fact, our water use entails the use of electricity. That's why, when managing our water, we have to be very parsimonious.
This house could represent the future. folks should begin to reflect on their mores and perhaps consider the possibility of changing their habits, of changing their lifestyle without necessarily turning it upside down. In any case, we should start thinking differently. Ask ourselves, how can I change my energy consumption, adjust my lifestyle? It would be helpful if we all had the means to have access to this type of habitation.
We wanted to realize this experience to avoid proselytizing. We didn't want to go around telling people what was good and what wasn't. We simply decided to do things the way we see them and show that it's totally possible. What may have appeared to be a utopia was absolutely realizable.
Homes of the future will no doubt be inspired by the building techniques of the past and will mainly use local natural raw materials. And it's already happening. Whether through atypical shapes, domed, round, wavy, or the choice of materials, wood, earth, straw, buildings are increasingly in harmony with their environment and blend into the landscape, affirming the desire for a different vision of living where architecture acts as a bridge between man and nature.